Sábado 13 y domingo.
Que defendió su propiedad
esta propiedad del empresario Alejo.
Don Alejo Garza Tamez.
On the morning of Sunday, November 14, 2010, deep in the quiet back roads of southern Mexico, an aging rancher named Alejo Garza Tamez stared down death itself. Alone on his land, he was given an ultimatum by one of Mexico's most feared cartels: hand over his ranch or die. But this wasn't just any man, and this wasn't just any ranch. What followed was a 4-hour siege, one that turned a humble cowboy into a national folk hero. Mexico, 2010, the peak of the drug war. At the time, Mexico was caught in its deadliest phase of its modern drug war. President Felipe Calderon had launched a full-scale military offensive against the country's powerful cartels. What followed was chaos. Troops flooded the streets, cities became war zones, and the cartels responded with terrifying force. Among the most vicious was Los Zetas, a cartel known for their military backgrounds and their brutality. Massacres, beheadings, and terror campaigns were their calling card. They weren't just drug runners, they were warlords. On November 12th, Alejo noticed something wasn't right. Convoys of blacked-out pickups, mostly Toyota Tacomas and Hiluxes, passed his remote property. Some slowed down, some stopped. He didn't need to ask questions. He knew exactly who they were. The next day, a group of 10 armed men showed up to his front door. They claimed to be businessmen interested in buying his ranch. But Alejo was no fool. He called them out, told them that he knew what they were there after. They laughed at him. A 77-year-old man standing alone in the doorway and gave him 24 hours to leave his land. Alejo's response? Simple, really. Then come and take it. The siege begins. That night, Alejo sent his ranch workers away. He knew what was coming. He wasn't going to risk their lives. Then calmly, and with quiet resolve, he fortified his home, turning it into a one-man fortress. He laid out his rifles at every window and took up position. At dawn, 20 cartel gunmen arrived. They didn't expect a fight. They thought this would be an easy show of force, but they had no idea who they'd be dealing with. Alejo wasn't just a rancher. He was a sharpshooter, a hunter, a cowboy, and above all, a man of honor. Friends called him Don Alejo, a man whose word was his bond. When the first cartel gunman fired a warning shot, Don Alejo didn't flinch. He returned fire with precision, dropping 2 cartel members on the spot, and the ambush was on. A lone warrior. As bullets shred the walls of his home, Alejo moved from window to window, rifle to rifle, always one step ahead. He used the terrain, the shadows, and his own sharp instincts to stay alive. When 2 cartel members breached his home, he was waiting with a shotgun. They never left. In frustration, the gunmen launched grenades and rained automatic fire on his modest home, but Don Alejo kept firing. He held them off, alone, for over 4 hours. Eventually, fearing the arrival of police or military forces, the cartel fled. Don Alejo had done the unthinkable. He stood his ground and lived long enough to watch them retreat. The aftermath. The next day, Mexican soldiers arrived to find a bullet-ridden house and the bodies of 4 cartel members sprawled across the ranch. Inside, they found Don Alejo, slumped in his bathroom, his rifle still aimed at the door. He had died from multiple gunshot wounds overnight, but in his defiance, his fight became a legend. A Mexican folk hero. Through mainstream outlets hesitated to cover the story, some allegedly out of the fear of cartel influence. Social media exploded. Independent news channels, online communities, and everyday citizens began to share Don Alejo's story. In Mexico, he became a symbol of courage, standing along folk legends like Emilio Zapata and Pancho Villa. Some say his name is revered like Wyatt Earp in the U.S., an outlaw hero who fought not for riches or power, but for principle. In a land torn apart by fear, one old man showed the country what true bravery looked like. Don Alejo Garza Tamez, cowboy, warrior, legend.